Magandang umaga po mga kaibigan. Nakakatapos na po tayo ng pagdiriwang ng Pasko kahapon. At ika nga nasa Christmas season pa rin naman tayo. At ngayon pong araw na ito, pag-uusapan natin sa ating coffee chat kung ano ang description ng taong 2020. As the year draws to its end in a matter of days, they say that hindsight always offers a perfect vision. So today, kasama po natin si Dr. Beaver Tamesis, Pangulo po naman ng Pharmaceutical and Healthcare Association of the Philippines. Kasama rin po si Ginoong Ted Padilla, ang Executive Director ng Naturang Samahan. I'll be asking them about their description of the year 2020 and ano yung posibilidad na magkaroon na ng bakuna na matagal nang inaasam-asam ng ating daigdig. Dr. Beaver, magandang umaga po and Merry Christmas. Was it really a Merry Christmas that we had?
Well, as merry as we can make it. So thankful to still be here, of course.
Of course, yes. What's your description of the year 2020?
Forgettable, I wish. Kung pwede malimutan sana, I would. It's been obviously a year of dread, anxiety, panic, but at the same time, coming back strong with greater knowledge, understanding of what the enemy is, and being able to handle it. I think ang laki ng diferensya nung panahon ng between the months of March to May versus now in terms of doctors' abilities to be able to deal with patients, our ability to control the pandemic, at least bumabagsak, or at least it went down to a very low level in terms of reproduction number, yung kabilis, kung gaano kabilis kumakalat yung virus. Less and less people are being confined sa ICU. You can talk to any hospital administrator, halos kalahati na lang or less than half na lang yung ICU capacity. So it's really much better now. Yung occupancy pala ng ICU, so only less than half already. So it's much better compared to the really scary times. But yes, it's a time for optimism as the year draws so close kasi lumalabas na nga yung mga bagong bakuna na aprobado na at nagsisimula na rin ma-roll out sa ibang bahagi ng mundo. So hopefully sometime 2021 nandito na rin sa atin.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Ted, from your end, how would you describe the year 2020?
Well, is there a reset button somewhere? No? Could we bring 2020 into a store or somewhere, no, or return it if that's there's any way we can do that, no? Yes, I think just for any industry, for most industries, if not all, 2020 was just unusual, no? And more so, of course, for our industry, the pharmaceutical industry, no, the innovative research-driven industry, because so much was expected of the members, no, of the companies in this undertaking, and given the limited amount of time, the race, no, to come up with innovative medicines with the vaccine, with treatments, I think it just showed how noteworthy how the players, the members have been, in this regard. So yes, there were so many people, so many lives that were needlessly lost in many cases that of our loved ones. I wish we could really go back to November of 2019 or so, when we could already have begun, let's say, planning to prevent this. But at the same time, it was also shown how, given circumstances, the character of the industry came through. No, it's shown through. So while we're having challenges, of course, in terms of us as a business, there are so many things to be thankful for as actually you might even say as a vocation, no? As an advocacy for putting together all our resources to make sure that the vaccines come out, no? And they have. In record time. So this year has proven to be really really a milestone year for us in the industry.
Okay, Siguro para sa ating mga manonood at mga kaibigan, it's worthwhile reviewing the stages kung paano ginagawa ang bakuna. Because I've heard of several countries having their own. They're trying to develop their own vaccines. How hard and how difficult and how costly is it to come up with a vaccine which may be taken in by the international community? Dr. Beaver.
Well, we always talk about how much it costs, approximately $2.6 billion to come up with a vaccine. These are in regular times, right? When we're doing things on our own, syempre, everything's proprietary, everything's confidential. This year, I don't know the total cost. I think nobody has stopped to start counting yet the cost, but there's been a lot of sharing of information across companies, across universities, academe, government resources, right? Even from government to government. In China was able to share with us kagad the genome of the SARS coronavirus 2. When that was shared, everything began, right? In January, when that particular genome was made available to the world, suddenly Moderna, the Pfizers, the biotechs, all the other companies jumped in, took a look at it, and started formulating, potential targets kung saan pwede tirahin itong virus na to. In ordinary times, you don't get that because everybody's thinking about their own proprietary interests. So the unprecedented cooperation that began when this pandemic first started back in January this year, can you imagine it was just this year na kumalat sa mundo? Suddenly, in 9 months' time, you have a vaccine that's already been approved. Right? It's amazing the kind of cooperation that has happened here, and many companies, I believe, are at least foregoing at the pandemic during this pandemic era. Hindi sila naniningil ng royalties or property rights over the vaccines. Everybody's just so concerned. Let's heal us one muna so that everybody can be protected and we can all move forward. When the pandemic is over, ayun, kanya-kanya ng diskarte yan to determine which is the better vaccine for the future, right? Pag wala na yung pandemic. And that's just to prevent future epidemics of this particular, from this particular virus. But I think it shows really the level of cooperation. But on an ordinary daily basis, we're talking easily about $2.6 billion.
Okay, and you have to have the facilities and the people to do it.
Correct. And the talent, the right talent, right? You talk about facilities, you talk about people. And when you look at the list of countries that have started trying to look into developing their own vaccine, Thailand, for gosh sakes, wow, it's amazing. It's really a matter of prioritizing health, research, and development. And that's the thing that prepares the country to be able to participate in these types of scientific endeavors. The only reason the pharma companies were able to generate so much vaccine candidates in such a short time is because they do this every day. This is what they do for a living, right? So there's constant investment in research, constant focus on trying to solve for the problems of the future. Kung hindi nangyayari yan, we would have been scrambling to try to find the results, right? Let's take away the first 9 months of the year because almost all of the new players are only starting to come out now this last quarter. And when you look at the different countries that have started beginning their own vaccine programs, can you imagine if this was only now, kung tanggalin natin all the research that was already happening and we began only today, we'd have to wait another 18 months to get a vaccine because hindi pa nga sila sanay. So it's important that that constant research, that constant investment in research, in human capital, in the proper scientific facilities. I mean, like I talked about yung Research Institute of Tropical Medicine back in the day when I was still in training. This was over 30 years ago. Can you imagine that? Wala na. It's dead, mothballed. Lahat ng mga gamit na yan. Kasi there was no investment. There's no sustained investment in the future.
Yeah. I heard of this sob and sad story that when Japan opted to say hindi na muna namin susuportahan yan. And that was the end of it. And then we heard from RITM, ngayon na lang na meron ito. Except for matuka ka ng ahas, makagat ka ng asong ulol o ng politikong ulol. Excuse me. Kasama yan. Anyway, Charles Dickens appropriately said it when he wrote that book, Tale of Two Cities. This is the best of times. This is the worst of times. In situations like this, it brings the best in man. It also brings the worst in man. Now, I heard Vietnam is also trying to develop its own vaccine. I had lunch with a diplomat and he said, Melo, you may not believe it, we're doing something. We'd like to find out what we can do as a country with our research and development, how to do the vaccine. Well, the president said, I'll give you 10 million pesos to develop the vaccine some months ago, which I think is not even a drop in the bucket compared to the 2.6 billion. Now, I have a question here from a viewer, si Gilbert Buenaventura. Yun daw ba mga pharmas required to conduct local testing of the vaccine in the Philippines? Or yung test ay ginawa na sa abroad and will be taken by FDA and DOH as a complete test and therefore good for Filipinos without conducting the tests in the Philippines? May I have your take on this particular issue?
Normally, we would love to be able to do studies here in the Philippines. So, in normal times, gagawa kami ng mga studies. Siyempre, gusto namin lahat ng klaseng tao na kasama. Keso puti, itim, singkit, Asians, whatever race, multinational, etc. Just so that when you roll up all of the data, you have enough representation of all of the different potential ethnicities na pwedeng gumamit ng bakuna. And you want particularly those who may need it the most. That's in normal times. In normal times talagang ginagawa namin yan. So talagang oftentimes merong mga sites or clinical trial sites na nilalagay din dito sa Pilipinas. In fact, I'm proud to announce that we do have 2 upcoming clinical trial sites, the Lung Center and the Philippine General Hospital, for our oral treatment for mild to moderate COVID disease.
Really?
Magsisimula na hopefully this week, if not this coming week. Hopefully in early January, makasimula na talaga final because parating na yung clinical supplies namin for the actual study. So that is normal behavior on the part of the companies. Normal yan.
Mm-hmm.
Kaso, this is a different situation. Siyempre, itong pandemic na to. We now need to find countries or places where malakas ang transmission, where mabilis ang recruitment ng pasyente, and then tuloy, mabilis din ang may resulta. Meaning, half of the patients na nakatanggap ng bakuna, yung kalahati na hindi nakakatanggap, you want to see kaagad na may nagkasakit. Particularly, you hope in those na hindi nakatanggap ng bakuna. And then, in paghahambing na yan. The Philippines, unfortunately, could not participate in some of these big multinational studies kasi wala ng kaso. The cases were not happening as quickly as say you put it in California.
Mm-hmm.
Grabe the cases in California, right? Or in South Dakota, where basically your positivity rate was something like 60-80%.
Okay.
4 out of 5 people had the virus. So tuloy mabilis ang hawaan. So tuloy makita mo kaagad yung effect ng bakuna. So if you put the vaccine trial dito, mamumuti mga mata natin, wala pang resulta.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
except maybe if you put it in really crowded places like Divisoria Market. I don't know if you saw the photos of the other day. Ibang klase, wow. Physical distancing, forget it. 1 inch or 1 centimeter.
That's social distancing for you.
Absolutely, right? Maybe if you put it in a location like that, yeah, maybe you can get trial results kaagad. So good luck to the WHO Solidarity Studies because, wow, I mean, like with a positivity rate of about 1, less than 1%, I mean, like reproduction number pala of less than 1 or a positivity rate of less than 5%. Good luck finding the transmission.
Okay. So given such a situation, I came across a report na may mga 1,000, mahigit na 1,000 Pilipino sa United Arab Emirates ang lumahok sa tests ng isang Sinopharm or Sinovac company, no? China-based company. Kaya lang, hindi ko na nabalita kung kumusta yung 1,500 na mga Pilipinong lumahok. Nakita ko lang yung release na nagpabakuna sila para sa tests, pero hindi ko nakita yung results. Our company is expected to be transparent in the results of these field trials. Doc?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dapat yan ma-publish, be it online or in paper, so that you can and then hopefully you can get the details as to the different ethnicities or nationalities that participated and what was the outcome. So until ma-publish yung data niyan, imbis na press release, right? Kasi right now, syempre, pandemic, everything is by press release, imbis na absolute actual scientific publication. So to me, it's so hard to tease out the data. But we're really looking forward to all of the details of those particular studies and the trials where Filipinos participated. Now, syempre, I don't expect that the Filipino will have a very different behavior or medical response to the vaccine versus, say, the other regular participants in the study, right? But it's always good to be able to study and understand whether may konting differences that may come out, may emerge, right?
Okay. I remember si Ambassador Chito Santa Romana ng Pilipinas sa China ay nakasama sa press briefing ni Secretary Roque. And I remember asking him, yung bang phase 3 na-publish na? Dahilan sa yun daw ang mahalaga, sabi ng mga kaibigan ko sa medical at scientific community. Ang sabi niya, ginagawa pa lang, ilalabas daw ng China in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. So sabi naman ng isang kaibigan kong doktor, kung hindi pa lalabas yun, press release pa lang yan at baka hindi paniwalaan. From
Exactly.
PHAP, ano po ang pananaw ninyo rito, Doc, and of course, Ted?
Well, if I can go first, I
Yes.
think that's a very relevant and timely comment. Because I mean, like just the other day, 2 or 3 days ago, we were reading about how in Brazil, the efficacy of the vaccine was only 50%. This is the Chinese, was it Sinovac?
Sinovac.
Vaccine, right? 50% lang ang efficacy. Then yesterday, was it? Suddenly out of Turkey, there's this press release that says that in their 7,000 patient study, a small segment of the population, 90% naman daw ang positive efficacy rate. You start wondering, where is the truth between these two very widely different numbers, right?
Hindi mo naman pwedeng i-average yun, ano? Delikado yun.
Pwede, delikado yun. Kasi you look at the details, the press release of the one from Turkey was quite intriguing. Sinabi nila na a small segment of the population, a small group, parang ganitong kaganda ang efficacy. Eh syempre, pinili mo na yung best responders eh. Parang labas yan, right? Until you see the actual detail, it's very hard to accept. It's a press release.
Yeah. There was a time noon na may isang PC commander, sabi niya, ako na ang provincial commander dito sa probinsyang ito. At ang sabi nung papaltan, teka muna, ano ang papel? Ano ang order? Sabi niya, pursuant to front page of Manila Bulletin, dated so and so, ako na yon. Ay, hindi pa, wala pa yung papel. So, ganun pala yon. Hintayin natin yung papel bago tayo sumang-ayon. Ted, your take?
Yeah. No, actually, and we defer, of course, to the scientists here, because it's important that they publish the results, these trials, so that this can be reviewed by their peers. It's important to do that, yung peer review na sinasabi, because right now the situation globally is so fluid that any laboratory or any country can say, okay, we're doing this in this place, and then we have these results. And they're promising, but obviously these have to be ano yung sinabi noon sa Soviet Union, trust but verify. I mean, let's give each other the benefit of the doubt, but it has to be verified, and it can only be done through peer review. through scientific review. And I think that's what's happening now. So sometimes the terminology, yung mga lexicon, it becomes also quite confusing. Like 50%, is it really that bad, or is it so bad, or is it somehow promising? These are the things that we also need to understand. And in terms of the phase 3 trials, I mean, uh, I think there are not that many candidates that actually had undergone this successfully across the world. So these also need to be mentioned. I think that's also why in many countries the medicines regulatory authorities, for instance, are giving emergency use authorization. No? Hindi pa yung sinasabing full-blown, as in normal, quote-unquote, times. No? But nonetheless, as many of these research documents, the data should be made available, no, for all to review.
Okay. Liwanagin po natin, Dr. Beaver, pag sinabing for emergency use lang, anong ibig sabihin nito? And how different is it doon sa regular na paggamit ng bakuna na makikita natin tulad nung kabataan ko na meron kaming DPT na binibigay sa eskwelahan?
Well, pag emergency use is clearly only for these times of pandemic. So during this particular time, because the data is very suggestive, very strong, the large clinical trials, over 60,000+ patients enrolled na mukhang talagang effective. So parang it becomes almost unethical not to allow it to be used in a situation where talaga your hospital systems about to collapse. Wala nang ICU beds. I've been hearing that in California, 0 ICU beds available na ngayon, right? So really, these are scenarios where tuloy, a heart attack patient cannot even get into the hospital.
Yeah.
Kasi punong-puno na ng COVID. So this is a real emergency, right? It's a true emergency. So you need to already start trying to protect the community. So which is why you start doing emergency use. Now, as the pandemic wanes or is better controlled, you now want the full-blown regular registration. So tuloy, you'll now want to see all of the potential side effects, all of the different ethnicities, all of the special patient groups that dapat talaga napag-aralan, at least we can see whether or not the vaccine still works in those particular groups, so that now you can now develop the appropriate indication or recommendation as to how and when not to use such a vaccine. Now, just so that we're all aligned, that we're not picking on Sinopharm or Sinovac or the Chinese vaccines. Even AstraZeneca is having a difficult time getting approval, right? Hindi pa aprobado yung AstraZeneca vaccine because nga, biglang lumabas this strange results where about 2,000-3,000 patients received a half dose for the first dose and then a full dose for the second dose. Tuloy, they had two groups of patients, one with a 90% efficacy and the other group with a 60% efficacy. So when they combined that, naging 70%. Because nga mas malaki yung grupo na only 60% ang efficacy rate. So tuloy, you really need to understand the full detail, at least ma-publish itong mga phase 3 trials so that people can determine whether or not you need more studies or pwede na i-approve. Ang kagandahan with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, pwede na ma-approve kasi ang linaw, ang linis ng data. Pero itong like this AstraZeneca vaccine, it was like, okay, so where exactly are we? What's going to be the right dose? So these are the new questions that were stimulated by that particular result that they had. Now, some people may argue 60% is still better than the WHO recommendation of 50%, right? And then at such as low price, really a pandemic, not-for-profit price, then fine, maybe that may, in the cost-benefit analysis, it may work out na, sige, let's go with this na rin, right? Versus when you were saying, what is it, 600 pesos versus 3,000 pesos, one may decide na, sige, yan yung pangmasa. I will mass produce that and use that for every other person, just to at least get some protection going. Until we get more clarity as to what is the right dose or the right schedule for the actual vaccine. Yeah. So these phase 3 trials and the publication of the results actually protects the public. Importante talaga malabas yan.
Yeah. One thing is sure, kay may bakuna na, kay walang bakuna, nariyan yung pandemic. Nariyan yung pandemya, right?
Right.
So, a vaccine will not guarantee na COVID-19 will go away, right?
It won't.
No.
But I mean, like somebody asked me in a doctor medical conference the other day, do we ever see the end of COVID-19? Sabi ko, no. I think 1, 2, 3 years from now, that will always be our top of mind in terms of our differential diagnosis when we see a patient coming in with a cough and a fever and a pneumonia.
Mhm.
That'll be top of mind sa amin. Is it COVID? Is it community pneumonia? Is it a different kind of pneumonia? But COVID will always be there now. So it's there for the rest of our lives as as we normally treat, as we start emerging from the pandemic, we will always be wondering about whether the next patient who comes in is a COVID patient.
Yeah. But definitely, it will just be like flu, right? Nariyan na yan. Lagi nang nariyan yung trangkaso. Kaya lang, yung COVID-19 is a bit fatal, right?
Well, it's more fatal than it's more virulent than influenza, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll probably be with us every year, or something that we will always be thinking about.
I can just imagine how the world would be with this threat from COVID-19. Hindi ko makita yung sarili ko na babiyahe ako ng 9 to 12 hours sa eroplano, tapos pupunta sa ibang bansa, tapos kahalubilo yung mga iba't ibang lahi sa kumperensya. Hindi ko ma-imagine dahil ang suspect ko lagi, teka, baka may dalang COVID dito. You know, yung trust, pati yung pakikipagkamay mo, mawawala eh. Elbow to elbow, you will just nod or whatever, na bago yung buhay. Then, coming from where you are, ano nakita mo mga pagbabago sa atin mula na nagka-COVID-19?
You mean, yung how we like how we conduct ourselves daily, behavior,
Yeah.
etc. Katulad po nito, tayo nagzo-zoom tayo, parang normal na ito, no? I mean, we don't we lose the human contact, and yet at the same time we become even more accessible, no? Because sa sinasabi ng iba, nasa bahay lang yung tao na yan. Pwede natin tawagin sa Zoom, no? Or sa video conference, right? Medyo maski na may konting hangover or what, okay lang. Ano?
Uh-huh.
That's no. But the fact is we become somewhat more accessible. But we also have lost the ability to, let's say, I want to see what your reaction might be if I ask a question. And when we're dealing with our colleagues, especially like in our office is not a very big office. I mean, we used to enjoy even having small impromptu meals together. No,
Yeah.
that's gone. I mean, we can only do that in let's say a place where we know that there are mga plexiglass shields in place in the tables, or that they really proper distancing, and we cannot have even everybody in the same room. Parang yung conference room na namin sa office nagiging tambakan na ng mga donations, no? Because that's what our members are doing now, no? There are many things that we realize are more important. Of course, our safety, our health, the fact that we are exposed to many individuals, many of whom are seniors who have underlying conditions, no? And the other thing that's also worrisome, and I feel it personally, is because I have sons who cannot go to school, no? And the reason they cannot go to school is not because there's the environment where they're located is a high risk, but because the rest of the country, I think, would look at it or the government would look at it very in a very unfair manner, siguro, if they allow certain areas to resume face-to-face education, even if the schools can definitely provide the safety, because others cannot, no? So what we're seeing now is that a lot of very young people are losing the ability to socialize properly, no? Now we hope that the vaccine does come. We really want vaccines to come, if only to allow this kind of environment to come back, even in a limited scope, no?
Yeah.
And we see it there. We see it. I mean, in our own circles, no? In our own bubbles, you might even say, no, that these things have to be burst at the soonest possible time so we can allow more interaction.
Yeah.
Even if we don't get to shake hands anymore, even if we do the elbow to elbow and we have to wear the mask, as long as we can be together physically and make the eye contact, no?
Yeah.
More than anything. That's what we are missing, and I think that's what seems so important. The whole idea of being able uh, to make a negotiation face to face. No, that we don't even need to travel far. No, as long as we can do that in a limited scope,
Yeah.
that will be the beginning of our, I think, improvement in our well-being. No?
Okay. Okay. Over breakfast, nanood ako ng balita ng Al Jazeera. Nabanggit nila na meron ng problema, meron ng toll on mental health ng mga bata sa Estados Unidos itong COVID-19. May kausap akong diplomat, may anak siyang 2 lalaki na online ang pag-aaral dito sa Pilipinas. Sabi ko, kumusta naman sila? Pag walang online, away lagi sila. Nag-aaway, naglalaro, naghaharutan. Buti na lang di nagkakasakitan. Sabi ko, kung nag-aaway sila at naghaharutan, medyo okay pa yan dahil wala silang sakit. Pag yan hindi na kumikibo sa isa't isa, baka may lagnat na yan. Sabi niya, oo nga, no? Pero talaga, pag hindi mo naman napigil, yun namang misis ko ang nagwawala dahil hindi na makontrol. So nabago yung dynamics ng pamilya.
That one, that mental health issue, that's true, no? And it's not also on the children, but also on the parents who
Yeah, of course.
who have to, or yung talagang guard 24/7, no? Oh, and that's also it cuts across ages, it cuts across races, cultures. If you're confined, while I don't really agree with what's going on in the U.S., in terms of their protests about, because of my individual liberties and rights before everybody else, I can understand that feeling of not being able to actually do anything face to face, because it's nerve-wracking also to be confined, no?
Yeah.
I mean, you can still have a balance like what they're doing in Singapore, in more successful countries, no, that have addressed this issue, no? So you can still have a balance as long as people are aware of not just their individual rights, but their responsibilities to the community. No?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Okay. I have a reporter noon sa Radyo Veritas who's now working as an X-ray technician in London. Sabi ko, how are you doing? Sabi niya, alam mo sir, ang problema namin baka mag-lockdown level 4 kami rito. Kako, kumusta ang trabaho? Walang magagawa dahil ito ang trabaho namin. Papasok at papasok kami. Yung aking may bahay is a nurse. Ako, X-ray technician. So we're all required to work. Pag hindi ka pumasok, apektado naman yung livelihood mo, apektado pa yung career mo. I can just imagine how difficult it would be for people in the front line. What's your take on this? Sa PHAP, ano ang tingin ninyo dahil you deal with people, you deal with disasters as well. Paano yun, Dr. Beaver?
Well, I can tell you at the very start of the pandemic, that was the first concern that we all had. Because really, hospitals were basically on the brink of collapse. So our healthcare system was basically on the brink of collapse. When 1/3 of your hospital staff, your nursing staff, your institutional workers, your med techs, your respiratory technicians, your anesthesiologists, 1/3 of them are becoming positive and you have to isolate them. So tuloy, the 2/3 would now have to pull for the 3. And sooner or later, yung 2/3 yan, sila rin makakasakit. That was simply because there was this huge shortage of personal protective equipment. So that was the early thrust talaga na ginawa ng PHAP to make sure that we were able to also supply mga PPE sa mga frontline, the big centers that really had to deal with a ton of these patients. So to the tune of something like 150 mil, over 150 million pesos, I think at last count, yung na-donate namin, we were able to raise and donate in forms of PPE and other supplements to help nga itong mga hospital frontliners natin.
Mhm.
Today it's better, right? I mean, like I said at the start of today's meeting, that the numbers are so much better in terms of the number of hospital staff who are the hospital bed occupancy is so low now. In terms of the COVID patients, it's not even 50% anymore for the most of the centers. So that's great. That's great news that they're now better able to cope. People are now more used to the different types of levels of protection, what you cannot be doing, how you protect yourselves from doctor to doctor transmission, because that was happening also. Doctor to doctor transmission, doctors who were working in COVID wards transmitting to other doctors, right?
Uh-huh.
Because they let their guard down. So to people learn how to cope and deal with this now. So we're much, much better prepared today versus say April this year. Can you imagine? Just 8 months time, a huge world of difference already.
Yeah. Uh, in as much as you represent different multinational companies, do you also get to exchange notes with your counterparts in other countries? How different is our approach to that of their host country's approach?
I'm
Is
so jealous.
different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yan lang masasabi ko, I'm jealous.
Well, I think Melo, if you just look around the region, just ASEAN, even just ASEAN alone, I mean, um, where I have to go back again to the example of like education. No? I believe we're the only country left that hasn't had any kind of, kind of ability to provide even limited form of face-to-face, no? For the kids. Because everything has been always just, lockdown pretty much and limited mobility. Okay, in terms of the caseload, as already as Beaver mentioned earlier. No, I mean, yeah, I think we've sort of like we're working within a certain range, no, that has been put under some kind of a degree of control, no. But at what cost, also, no? I mean, you can still have a balance, no. And our counterparts in the other, like in the other trade associations, I mean, we deal also with not just, of course, Asia, but we also deal with our counterparts, say, in Europe. No, I mean, they have a much more degree of freedom, and yet, of course, there are many countries there that are also, mandating the use. Well, some of them cannot even mandate, but definitely strongly encourage, say, the use of masks. No, and I think tayo lang yata yung gumagamit ng mga face shields. No, if I'm not mistaken, everybody else is just limiting it to the mask. But again, um, is there anything that we can do differently that can make things at least more in sync with our way of just being able to conduct our daily affairs while within the limits of responsibility. Those are the things that we are also, yeah, tama yun. We're really jealous of what we see in other markets, no, in other places.
Okay. Oo nga, no? Wala akong nakikitang may face shield dun sa mga international news reports, no? Mukhang tayo lang yung may face shield. Pero, marami talagang dapat sigurong itanong at maraming dapat sagutin ang mga kinaukulan. Pero very generic yung statements nyo na you're jealous, no?
Envious. I mean, it's not to say that we know that the interests. Okay, we believe that the interests of the public are there. I mean, let's be naman cognizant of the idea that the government is doesn't want to harm people. Of course, they want to protect people for sure. No? Yeah. I mean, so that's why to the point that sometimes there might be a overzealousness maybe on some of the ideas. No, yeah, we just have to face it. No, it's just, I think what's happening here is that no one really prepared for this, and so people are managing ano yung tawag dun, just managing by muddling through, no, in some cases, no.
Muddling through. Okay, that's right. That's about right.
Malupit yun ah. Malupit yun. Pero anyway, balik tayo doon sa ating discussions. No? Tinitingnan ko rin kasi kung ano yung impact nito. Well, sabi nila, for every crisis comes an opportunity. I've asked people, pag bumibili ako ng gamot ko sa drugstores, tanong ko, aside from maintenance medicines, ano pa yung pinaka mabili? Sabi nila, food supplements tumaas. Kako, ano pa, anapunan nyo? Ay sir, hindi nagbago. Tumaas pa nga yung mga pampaputi. Sabi ko, teka muna. Sa gitna ng pandemya, marami pa rin gustong pumuti. I don't know how Dr. Beaver will react to this, accounts from drugstores.
Well, we've known for many years, right? Even during the darkest days of the industry, when economies collapse or when we go through a huge economic crisis, one sector that's always very resilient is the beauty sector. Think about it. What's the human psyche? If I cannot control my environment, like it's panay crisis after crisis, what can I do? I will try to control the things that I can control. And oftentimes that's about beauty or wellness. So during these times of economic crisis, the beauty industry, be it actual salons or be it supplements or be it personal beauty care, actually all the sales will always go up. I think if you talk to any economist, they can point that out if you look at the data. And while we think it's funny, it actually just plays to human psyche. Control what you can control, and that's really, at least at certain point in time, my personal beauty, my personal looks.
Yeah. I remember, noong Yolanda sa Tacloban, nagtungo si Brother Armin Luistro, yung DepEd Secretary.
Yeah.
Noong nakita siyang teacher na naka-makeup at naka-lipstick, sabi niya, sa gitna ng pandemya, ganyan. Ang paliwanag ng teacher, ito po ang pagkakakilala sa akin ng mga estudyante. Na naka-makeup ako, naka-lipstick. Parang gusto ko lang ipakita na despite the tragedy, yung resilience ko, nandiyan pa rin. Nandiyan pa rin ako. At yung pa rin yung pagkakakilala nila sa akin. Meron man akong problema, may worries man ako about my future, pero nandiyan ako. Yung aking pagkakakilala ng mga bata will remain. Parang gano'n.
Ability to control. Control what you can. And that's usually yourself.
And it's also, I think in your example of that teacher, I think I remember you may have even mentioned that before in one of the pre-pandemic, in one of the kapihans. No? The idea really is that it's a form of assurance to her students, to her pupils, that everything is going to be all right. No, look at me. I'm facing the day like any other day. And I think to the point raised that Beaver mentioned also. Yes, parang yung prayer ni Saint Francis, no? Knowing the things that I can change, and the things that I cannot change. And then the point is, this is what I can do. And it will help me also cope with the challenges and the crisis, to face the day, looking as good as I can. The well-being aspect of it.
Okay. Let me ask you, gentlemen. I've been in the media for some years, decades. There's always the bad news and the good news syndrome. Ano ikang good news, anong bad news? The good news is we may have the vaccines all right. And I heard from the FDA Director General Domingo that they will observe strict protocols. And that's an assurance. Now, let me ask you, the good news is while the vaccines may be available, while we may have all the money we need, baka nga may sobra pa, do we have the capability to store and transport the vaccines? Because vaccines have limited shelf lives. Dr. Beaver and Ted, your thoughts about this, please.
Well, the Philippines already has its national immunization program, which has always required them on a cold chain. So, kumbaga, there's a basic infrastructure already in place, particularly for refrigerated vaccines, right? So if we're going to use refrigerated vaccines such as Moderna or AstraZeneca or even the Chinese vaccines, right? Potentially, we do have the infrastructures or to already at least get it down to the regional level, even down to the school level, if we're going to assume a school-based immunization program. So there is a basic infrastructure, all right? So how do you now ensure that the integrity of that, or do you have enough of it? That's something I think that the Department of Health, working with the various distributors in our country, be it Zweelig, Metro Drug, or whoever, should be able to work out and actually figure this out. Even the Pfizer vaccine, I think Zweelig has already invested in freezers. But how far down the food chain or how far down the cold chain that will be they will be able to implement, that's open to question because the obviously that's a humongous investment. The good news is that the Pfizer vaccine can be at refrigerated levels of temperatures for about 5 days. I think so. Dapat within 5 days from the time na ilabas from the freezer, dapat magamit na yung bakuna, right? So there is that small window of opportunity, but unlike the Moderna vaccine, which is cold chain, just refrigerator level all throughout, syempre, mas maganda in terms of the reliability or at least the current abilities of the system of distribution ng Department of Health is already available for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Ted.
And then, yeah, Melo, we two points. No, one is we've actually been also closely coordinating with the air transport group, no, the airline industry. And I know that PAL has actually reached out to us to our association, and to try to work with our members who are mentioned prominently, you know, in terms of the transport of vaccines, because they want to be part of the logistics, no? In terms of the air transport from abroad to the different airports in the country, you know, and obviously that will also require working with the transport and logistics warehousing, you know, association as well. No? So we gearing up. No, that's what's going on at the moment here. No, there's gearing up. No, we're also working with our associates. Overseas, no, with the association in Switzerland, and we're also working with the groups over there to ensure that the protocols are strictly followed, no, in terms of the transport and handling. And then the second point I wanted to make is that I have a very strong personal connection, because one of the researchers, for example, in Pfizer, is actually a niece of ours. Of course, she's bound not to say much, but one of the things that she did say was that they're working as well to try to stabilize the vaccine so that it can be stored at a temperature slightly higher than -70 degrees. No? So
Yeah.
I think that's actually also being done at the moment. No? So there's definitely a lot of progress being made to make sure that this becomes globally available, particularly in markets where they may not have the advanced infrastructure. No, instead of a giant football field-sized logistics warehouse, they may only have, like, you know, refrigerated trucks, but several. No, I mean, they're trying to make sure that those things will be addressed.
Okay. What's
Pero bukod dun, I want to jump in also, Melo.
Please.
So aside from the cold chain, right? You also need to finally be able to reach the recipient, kung sino tatanggap ng bakuna. So now, while there is the public sector, why not use also the pharmacy chains? Boutiques are everywhere, right? Right now, pending with the Philippine Professional Regulatory Commission is the implementing rules and regulations on finally implementing the pharmacy law, which will now allow vaccination by pharmacists of adults. You can vaccinate adults na sana. So that would be for flu, for pneumonia. At least that was the initial envisionment of that particular IRR. But in these times of pandemic, where you now want to reach the whole population, 100 million, right? Or at the very minimum, 80 million to develop some form of herd immunity, you need the pharmacists to also be ready to be able to finally vaccinate, lalo na kung adults.
Okay.
And if we end up with the 2-dose vaccine, hopefully with the 2-dose vaccine, it's easy enough to recall patients so long as you have the proper database and all that. So hopefully within this first quarter, mapirmahan na yung implementing rules and regulations by the professional regulatory commissions, allowing now pharmacists to actually vaccinate also. So I know the Philippine Pharmacists Association is working hard on this. So this is something that we should also track, whether or not finally mabigyan na sila ng permission to vaccinate.
Yeah, siguro it would also do well if we will find out how many pharmacists do we have in the country. I guess we should have an inventory and find out if they are still willing and able to do it should the need arise. Doc Beaver.
Well, definitely they're gearing up. They're also, I mean, like I know one particular chain has actually trained. They have already developed a module on their own to train their employees. And all you need is one pharmacist per branch, or even one pharmacist for several branches, I believe, something like that. So they have the particular infrastructure ready in place. Now, hopefully, other pharmacy chains will also come up or have that particular mandated approved training program so that they already know how to do these injections.
Okay.
So nagsisimula na. They've been training for this. They've been preparing for this even before the pandemic, ever since the law came out, right?
Okay.
Ang problema, hindi pa napipirmahan yung IRR.
Okay. So tatanungin natin kung baka walang ballpen yung pipirma. Mapadala natin ng panulan.
Magandang tanong yan.
Yeah. Pero let me be candid about this. Coming from your association and your dealings with your counterparts, dun sa mga bansa na nagbabakuna na, anong sektor dapat ang bigyan ng prioridad sa pagbabakuna? Dahil
well, I'm very jealous of my classmates.
You're not politicians.
I'm very jealous of my classmates, medical school classmates. I see them posting their photos of getting vaccinated already. But at the same time, I'm not jealous because at least I don't live in a very, very high risk scenario, right? I don't live inside an ICU or an infectious disease where I have to see all of these patients.
Yeah.
Pero definitely sila ang dapat maunang bakunahan, yung mga frontliners talaga. Now, the next group in the US and the UK has been yung mga people in facilitated living facilities, right? For a home for the senior citizens. Tayo, we don't have that. So sila captured audience. They know where all the senior citizens live. We don't have that.
Except for PSWD. Meron sila.
Yeah, maybe a few, right? I mean, like how many of them are there, right? Not like in the US, whole states have are covered by these. So I guess the question is, how do we identify and choose the next set of vulnerables, right? Is it now the frontline workers? Is it going to be those fast food servers? Is it going to be the people delivering drugs, the truckers? Is it going to be yung mga bus drivers? Essentials, people who are keeping the economy going. All right, that could be that should be the. Sana, I would love to see a more vigorous debate out in the public. Sino ba dapat talaga? So that people understand what's the thinking that went in behind these choices that are going to be made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, if I may chime in, I think what's important to keep in mind is that those who, aside, we talk about the frontline healthcare workers, so then they look at all frontliners, no? Aside from the examples that Beaver mentioned already, what we're seeing here is that those who cannot work from home, because that's the thing. I think that we were listening to the discussions with the T3 group. So all of these private companies that are putting in donations to buy vaccines from AstraZeneca, for example, they're not necessarily being done to that their own workers are the priority. But what's important is that those who get the vaccines are actually those who cannot really, let's say, like in our industry or in other industries where we can conduct business this way and do everything online. many cannot. No, so in fact, that's also one consideration that they're looking at. No? But there really needs to be some kind of a discussion as to which industries really should get the priority, for their workers, particularly because you cannot produce a gadget or a widget, as they say, from home. I mean, you have to be in the factory assembling it and selling it. No, I mean, those are the things, and because factories, some are they're called, semi-intelligent already in place that they have robots or what, but the rest really you need human supervision and you need you. So those are the ones that also will require, I think, the priority for to get themselves vaccinated. The workers there.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's funny because our industry is not a priority when it comes to, unless there are people, in other words, the workers, because many of those in the companies can do this kind of work, remotely. But at the same time, you have to take into account those with comorbidities, those who are vulnerable, and those are the ones that you have to prioritize.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard the president say months ago na dapat mauna yung sundalo at yung police to maintain peace and order. How does that sound to you?
It is what it is. But that's all I can say.
Okay. Ted?
No, well, again, if they're manning out, checkpoints, outposts, peace and order, they're exposing themselves to all the elements. No? So I have no, I won't disagree with that. No? As long as I think what we need to make sure is that we have a constant a supply of the vaccines coming in already. No?
Yeah. Meron mga balita na may nagpapabakuna na at black market ang presyo. How do you feel about this, Dr. Beaver?
I think that's absolutely dangerous and ridiculous what they're doing. If they're getting black market, in quotation marks, black market vaccines, number one, is it even legit? Well, ang laman lang nun, salt and water, could be totally fake, right? Number two, if they're vaccinating themselves with something that has absolutely no proven benefit, you haven't even heard about the possibility of proven harm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, one of the main reasons why vaccines have such a bad reputation, or at least are being attacked by these anti-vaxxers, they create all sorts of rumors, all sorts of really crazy ideas like nanotechnology that will now trace wherever you go and go into your brain and change how your brain works, right? So all of these really weird. But this covers up legitimate side effects that have been reported for certain vaccines in the past. Why do you think we don't have an HIV vaccine at this time? Anti-AIDS vaccine. This is a disease that's over 40 years old, yet wala pa ring bakuna. Because early attempts at creating an HIV vaccine actually facilitated infection by HIV. So you have to really be totally aware of the potential downsides of your vaccine. Kaya importante talaga yung phase 3 trials so that makita natin, was there an actual increase in severity of illness? Was there an actual increase in positivity rate among those people who were vaccinated, right? So these are the things that ang kagandahan with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, you don't see at all. In fact, you see much, much less in terms of new infections. No severe cases in those vaccinated, and the 1 or 2 patients who still came down with the illness, hindi naman naging severe, versus the placebo group where talaga everybody, or at least significant portion of those that are positive, turned out to be severe. Right?
Really?
So these are the things that you need to see from the phase 3 trial. So for those who are willing to experiment with their bodies and get black market vaccines, good luck to you. Yan lang masasabi ko.
Yeah.
They are able to attend your funerals, ganon. Yes,
then, yeah, and Melo, you also have to bear in mind that if people who are getting these black marketed vaccines, number one, you don't even know if they're the real ones. No? Okay, there's no proof. No, it could be just saline solutions and all that repackaged. No. Number two, people who get this might suddenly feel that they have a sense of, whether it's invulnerability or what, they'll feel confident. They may think that they're actually COVID free, and then they'll go around, just living whatever, thinking that they can just go around doing whatever they're normally doing. Maybe wear a mask once in a while or what. They think that they're okay now, no? And they'll turn out to be super spreaders. So they're just going to be possibly doing more harm to the community than waiting for the actual vaccines to come. No? The idea of not infecting others will become a big lie altogether. No? So that's very dangerous. No? And then because of this, people will start losing trust again in vaccines. I mean, it's bad enough that we are experiencing that already in this country for what we know, other reasons, but we don't want that to happen, especially now. No, I mean, this is a pandemic. You know, we have to make sure that there is a reliability, safety assurance in the product that they're getting.
Okay. Let me ask you this, gentlemen. Kung ako galing kunwari sa Amerika at nabakunahan na ako ron, ako ba dapat sumailalim pa sa quarantine dito sa Pilipinas? Ano ang nakikita po ninyong sistema dapat?
Well, obviously, these things will have to evolve, right? And new processes and procedures that have to take place. We may end up in a scenario where we now have to have this vaccine passport, a vaccination record, right? I remember in the old days, and not so recent or not so old days, where you actually had to have this yellow card certified by the WHO so that you've been vaccinated for, say, yellow fever before makabiyahe ka ng South America or go to South Africa. So I had to have mine updated in the past, but nobody even paid attention to it. Maybe with this COVID, that might be already the proof that people will be looking for.
Yeah.
But until these systems are in place, I guess they still need to go through the quarantine procedures as mandated by the local health authorities.
Okay. All right. Pero wag lang makukuha sa Claro M Recto yung mga record na ganyan. Dahil lang sa pag kinuha mo sa Claro M Recto, adios patria adorada tayo. Being professionals that you are, isa sa pinaka inaasahang industriya ng Pilipinas ay turismo. Ang binabanggit ng mga airline companies ay kung magkakaroon lamang ng uniform program ang LGUs, baka mabuhay ang industriya at maglakbay ang tao. Iba ang procedure sa Baguio, iba ang procedure sa Davao, iba sa Bohol. Ano po ang inyong imumungkahi coming from the outside looking in?
I agree totally with the Department of Tourism. I mean, like, just thinking about all the potential necessary requirements to fly to Boracay or to go, even drive to Batangas, right? Oh my God, it's a maze. And there's really no reliable single source of information. The person that you speak to over the phone is different from the person who's finally there to give you your travel pass. It's a total mess. I'm sorry, it's a total mess. So yeah, we know that the tourism industry we are so reliant on the tourism industry. It's a pretty significant chunk of our economy, and rightly so, right? We have a beautiful country. People should really come out and visit the sites, but we have to get our act together.
Yeah, I think that we do need a uniform approach, no, to doing this. But the local governments, I know, have done a tremendous job in terms of putting in those protocols. No, and I think every municipality or city that is visited by so many have already put up their own tourist bureaus online, so that you can submit all the documents online and then get your QR code. No. So that by the time you're ready to go up to Baguio or fly to Boracay, you have all of these things in place. No? But yeah, it's correct. There should be step one, get this, step two. Hindi yung hodgepodge. No? There has to be some uniform set of procedures, no, across the country. No? To be, so that we can also not be, yeah, because you're right. Once you see how many steps you have to take, you get discouraged there. Even if it's already open, it has to be a uniform approach. And I think that's how we can help working with both the Department of Tourism and the local governments, etc. All of these, that's how we can work together on that, no? Coming up with a uniform set of protocols.
Okay.
Just
Mahalaga yun eh. Dahilan sa kung walang uniform set of protocols, we will be groping in the dark. Let me ask you this. You come from PHAP, from the outside looking in again. Yung online business got a boost with COVID-19. Most people now order food online and people deliver them to your doorsteps. In one forum I had weeks ago, we invited companies like GrabFood and Food Panda. At least yung GrabFood may sagot. Meron silang protocols. I never heard from Food Panda. Baka mali yung email address, mali yung mobile number, but it's okay. What should the government do to check on the health status of people in the food handling industry?
Well, they are frontliners, right? I
Yes,
mean,
of
like the people who are cooking, the people who are actually delivering, they can be considered frontliners.
Yeah.
And there are, I think, requirements in terms of how
Right.
they should be tested or they should be screened every day as they come to work
Okay.
to start doing their food deliveries. I think that should be part and parcel of it, right? Now, again, the potential concern here is whether or not you can transmit the virus through fomites, meaning yung mga droplets na naipon sa plastic wrapping, packaging, tapos inabot sa'yo, doon ka naman nahawa from the packaging. I think most I think most authorities are saying that it's very difficult to actually transmit from fomites or yung mga naka sa packaging, right? The more important reason for transmission is still respiratory. It's still airborne. That's like almost 99% of all cases of infection. So I think it's really important that legitimate health protocols, ensuring that the food handlers are not sick. All right, try to do that as much as possible. But I think we shouldn't be overly concerned with potential for transmission from the packaging or the plastic bags to the household. I'm not sure if that's. I think a lot of the data that I've seen does not really support that notion is a very that particular method is a very large proportion or significant proportion of infection.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ted?
Well, they should, any reputable food establishment that has already been part of, let's say, the before with their delivery service, and then now with Lala Move or Grab Food or Food Panda. No, I mean they do have to have at the very least reputational risk. They have to make sure that everything that comes to you is handled properly in the most hygienic manner. No, and I from I mean, we would have gotten, I think, more reports, say, of people getting sick because of, let's say, something that just entered the household out of the blue. No, so number one, I think the frontliners there should include, of course, yes, food handlers and the ones who transport the food. So these are the riders, no, that we talk about, and then and just continue to just even at home, just follow just basic safety protocols, no, before actually getting the food or serving the food and consuming it. That's just what I think everyone should be practicing.
Okay. The year 2020 saw us being tried with natural disasters. We started with Taal volcano. We had COVID-19 lockdowns. And then we had a series of typhoons. And yesterday we had earthquakes. I don't know how PHAP responded to this tragic events, if you may. Doc Beaver, Ted?
Our PHAP Cares has been highly effective, highly active throughout the year. Constantly, we're assessing the needs of the affected communities and bringing the necessary donations, be it cash, kind, clothes, or sanitary, hygienic, personal hygienic supplies. So that's something that I think our team has put in place together, really well-tested protocols, and and when we make a call for donations from our members, the members have been very, very generous in their donations.
Mhm. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. We've responded to most of these, if not all of the calamities that the country has faced, including COVID. And thankfully, our members are generous, and we've also solicited from private individuals who just come forward who have come to rely on the effectiveness and ability of PHAP Cares of the foundation to be able to go to as far as we can, no, to deliver the medicines, the PPEs, all, and other donations that have come forward.
Mhm. Okay. Looking forward, what do we see in 2021?
Well, there's
Well, at
much hope.
least definitely there's hope. There's
Yeah.
definitely hope, right? I think for the first, I suspect for the first semester up to about June, we will still have to continue living the way we are currently living, right? As the vaccine finally arrives and gets rolled out, hopefully our healthcare professionals are more protected, get the vaccination, and then after that, the essential frontliners get their vaccine. But I certainly hope that the private sector will be able to get vaccine also for their employees, even if they're non-frontliners, because again, these are one of the things that we are looking for in a business, right? Protect our employees to assure that we can continue delivering our services and delivering our business. So these are always going to be top of mind as a business organization.
Okay.
How do I get to protect my employees?
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, if I can't protect my employees, my business may continue to suffer.
Okay. Yeah. Doc, let me ask you this before we say thank you. Ano? You mentioned first semester. Whether we like it or not, after the first semester comes the second semester. And within the second semester is the month of October, which is the filing of certificates of candidacy for
Oh,
the
is it?
coming election. How do we prevent the political commodification, if there is such a term, of the vaccines?
Wow, that's a
Well,
difficult question, huh?
yeah, that's a very tough question to answer, Melo. No? Maybe we can stop recording. No, no.
We're live anyway. Yeah.
No.
Importante is, again, transparency, right? Upfront. That's why a healthy debate now, a healthy discussion today, that will identify and ilatag na natin sino ba dapat ang unang prioridad para malaman natin that these are and then track that these are the people who are actually receiving the vaccine kaagad. As the vaccine arrives and starts getting rolled out, dapat makita natin that these are the very same people, yung initial targets natin, sila talaga binabakunahan, right? And then tuloy, we can hopefully keep or adhere to these particular identified priorities and potentially shame people who cut the line, right? I mean, like we have hospitals that are reporting from, is it the UK or the US, where non-frontliner hospital workers ang unang nakatanggap. They were shamed. Nangyari yan. So people protested. So that, again, transparency. Transparency as to what is the criteria, who are the right people to get it first, and everybody waits for their turn.
Okay.
But there must be a system, the system has to be in place, right?
Yeah.
And has to be adhered to.
And the system should include, kung nabakunahan si Juan de la Cruz, ano ang epekto sa kanya? Magkakaroon ng monitoring.
Yes.
Nang sa ganun
And remember,
malaman.
these are 2 doses. Remember, these are 2 doses. So you have to track talaga sinong unang nakatanggap ng first dose and can they be recalled for the second dose. And these are some of the things that the tools that the industry has in place to help sana the government with their tracking of who has been vaccinated, who hasn't yet, or who is due for the second dose. We do have these apps. They're very effective. Some local startup in IT companies actually have these types of apps already. So I certainly hope that the Department of Health uses something that's already been invented and already available, rather than trying to invent everything themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, well, regardless of who the political players may be, what's important is that our industry is doing is that we're very much ready to support the government, in its national vaccine plan. We've, and then amongst our members, we've never seen this level of collaboration. So again, whoever is in charge or whoever wants to be in charge, our industry will continue to work hand in hand, to support this plan, the vaccination plan. And we know that Secretary Charlie Galvez is working very hard, and we've been very much there on at his side, to support even on the logistics, and we would be very pleased to support the government and the local, meaning national government and the local governments in that respect. What's also important, and this is addressed to all political candidates or whoever out there wants to make a difference, is that we hope to have a more sustainable industry so that we can continue reinvesting in research and development, and support the government in all its plans. So that way, all the holistic approach of government, from the Department of Health, from the Department of Interior Local Governments, LGUs, to the DTI, etc., all of this will work hand in hand, so that being in the country and preparing these vaccines and distributing them will be something that our industry, will be able to face and to continue supporting. So this is where policies and regulations should also work together. Because it's really funny, because sometimes we've been one of the most let's face it, we've been one of the most vilified industries, and yet here we are saving the world.
Okay.
And again, as I mentioned earlier on, Melo, the reason you can have a vaccine in less than 9 months is because research companies have been investing in research. So don't pupunta yung profits namin. Our profits don't go just to shareholders. They actually go into funding new research for the new pandemics that will come out.
Mm-hmm.
And by having the basic technologies available, messenger RNA didn't appear all of a sudden, right? These messenger RNA vaccines. We've been looking at this for at least 5 years.
Really? Okay. Well, alam po ninyo mga kaibigan, maganda itong discussion na ito. Si Ted mentioned several words na mahalagang i-pick up. Nawala si Dr. Beaver. Ano kaya nangyari sa it's the internet again sa kanyang end, no? But anyway, there is a saying na sabi ng mga Chino, may you live in interesting times. However, some people say it's more of a curse than a blessing. We cannot afford to live in interesting times anymore because there's this danger that we may be burned out. The words that they mentioned that we should look into is research. Sabi ni Dr. Beaver. Merong mga tao na galit pag may research na ginagawa. Baliw na baliw kayo sa research. Ngayon, napatunayan, kailangan ang pananaliksik ng matugunan kung anuman ang emergencies natin. May binanggit din si Ted, ito yung tungkol dun sa collaboration. I would suggest we change the term collaboration and turn it into a partnership. There's a great difference when you are partners rather than collaborators. Because during World War II, collaborators were shot dead. Okay? Di po ba? May historical perspective yon. Saka yung sinasabi na we are behind you. No. That should not be. We should be together. Shoulder to shoulder. Hindi pwede yung sige, nasa likod mo kami. Mali yun eh. Dahil sa kung nasa likod lang tayo at may nasa unahan, yung nasa unahan, chances are ang mababaril. Hindi. Sabay-sabay tayo. Let's approach the problem together. Okay? Well, I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Beaver. Nawala si Dr. Beaver Tamesis, but Ted Padilla is with us. So, thank you very much for being with us, and we look forward to more discussions. Binanggit ni Dr. Beaver, there should be an open discussion. Sino dapat ang mabigyan ng bakuna? And we will pursue that angle. We will continue the debate. We will talk to different sectors to find out sino dapat ang mabakunahan. Thank you, Ted and Dr. Beaver at sa mga kaibigan natin sa PHAP. Melo Acuña po, bumabati ng magandang umaga. Maraming salamat hanggang sa susunod na edisyon ng ating Coffee Chat. Have a safe weekend. Have a happy New Year. Thank you.
Happy New Year.